Seed Saving 101, preserve your legacy. And when I say preserve your legacy, if you save your seeds, those are your seeds. They're adapted to your environment and to your soil. And if you save them for next season, they become more and more adapted to your soil and to your environment. And then you pass them on to your children and to your neighbors. And that is something that, one, nobody can take away from you because you'll always have those. You can always feed yourself with those seeds. And it also connects you to a history. Who had those seeds before you? What memories do you have from eating that produce, from being with those people? So why do we save seeds? To engage with nature, preserve the existing varieties. So if you save seeds, you can eat the same vegetables that your grandma ate, that your great grandma ate, and that stays with you and in your family. Increasing genetic diversity, and to save money. Next slide, please. So when you engage with nature, you watch the development of that seed into a plant. It bears fruit, or it produces seeds some other way. And then at the end of that plant's life, you take those seeds, you save them for next year, and you start all over again. By saving seeds, you are part of every step of the process. So you see how those seeds grow, you see how the fruit develops, you see how the leaves develop. You learn more about the plant the more you grow it. And when you engage with nature, that particular food that you're growing becomes more a part of you. You become more invested in that food. Next. So also, when you save seeds, you preserve existing varieties. If you go to certain seed company websites, to certain seed company catalogs, they have a particular group of vegetables and fruit that they offer. And if you don't save your own seed, all you have access to is whatever the companies offer you. But like the hot fish pepper, there were a group of African Americans who saved these seeds over time, and they went out of favor because you couldn't find them in seed catalogs, but people were still saving them. They were passing them down, they were passing them around. And now, because people saved those seeds, we have access to a pepper that was available to our enslaved ancestors. And now you can find it in seed catalogs. But for years and years, those seeds were being preserved by a select group of people. And next slide, please. Another variety from the past are black peanuts. These are the Carolina black peanuts. The inside is the same color as a normal peanut, but the skin is black. And even from these heirloom varieties, there was a man named Don Sconce, I think his last name was, who was saving these seeds on his own. And he created his own variety from these seeds. So now there are two heirloom varieties of black peanuts. The seeds that Don Sconce saved came from this Carolina black. So his variety now has fewer and bigger peanuts in the shell. Okay. And by saving your seeds, you're also increasing genetic diversity. Each one of us, even from one child to the next with the same parent, we all have different genetic information, even though we came from the same source. Because each time within seeds, each time there's pollination, there's a different combination of genes that get exchanged. So if we save seeds and we have open pollinated seeds, the bees, the flies, the wasps, the whoever go from plant to plant to plant. So whatever is in each plant could contribute to the new seeds. So even though you want normally you want the produce that comes from your seeds to be similar to, or you want it to be true, what it's called true to type, which means it looks like the parent. They're not exactly the same. Each one has a little bit of a difference, and that little bit of difference could mean the difference between you eating this fall and not, because one particular plant might have a resistance to a certain pest. Another might be have a stronger adaptability to heavy rain and wind. And you want to keep that diversity within your populations, because if something comes up, you want there to be something of that group to survive. And another reason that we save seeds, next slide, is to save money. If you buy seeds, you can buy them once and you never have to buy them again. And that could be the best $2 you ever spent, because every year, if you're going back and paying some company who probably is not supporting your community or you, period, that's money that's going away. That money could be saved and put towards something else. So, and some people say, oh, you know what, it's only $2, so what? Well, guess what? Now, especially now that seed companies are being overwhelmed, they either have sold all of their seeds, or, as the case in Michigan, they're not allowed to sell seeds anymore. So if you save your own seeds, you're saving money and you're preserving your means of feeding yourself and your family. Okay, next slide. So this particular question has come up just about every week that we've had our DIY series. So the different types of seeds. So there's open pollinated seeds, and these are seeds that are pollinated. These are plants that are pollinated by insects, birds, the wind, human beings, or some other natural phenomenon. So, the pollen gets transferred from one plant to the next by some naturally occurring system. And then there's heirloom. Heirloom seeds are open pollinated, but not all open pollinated seeds are heirloom. Heirloom seeds are open pollinated, and they're passed on from generation to generation within a family or a community. Sometimes there are age limits on heirloom seeds, like they have to be so old to be considered an heirloom. But in general, they're just seeds that have been passed down from person to person. And hybrid seeds. So hybridization is when it's a human induced pollination from one plant to the next, and it's a cross within species or a cross within varieties. Hybrid seeds have a good outcome because they're chosen for specific properties. They have a good outcome for the first generation, but crossing the second generation, you can't guarantee that you're gonna get the same thing that you got the first time. So a lot of times people tell you to stay away from hybrid seeds. But if that's what you want to do, go for it. And if you're feeling experimental, save the hybrid seeds, grow them, see what happens. You might end up with something you like. You might end up with something you don't like, but you'd never know unless you try them. And hybrid seeds can be transitioned into open pollinated seeds, but it takes a while, and it's more for plant breeders or people who are just hobby breeders to make that transition, because it takes a while, because you have to select for certain characteristics until you get back to the original uh, first generation uh, first generation properties that you're looking for.
Josie, can I ask a
Yes.
question?
Yes.
So we got a question from the chat box, and the question is, and thank you, Sister Joyce, for the question. It says, since most food in grocery stores is not grown locally, is
Mm-hmm.
it ill-advised to use those seeds to start seed saving?
Um. No. Um. You can try it, especially if it's something that you really like the taste of. I would say go for it. And make sure whatever uh, produce that you're trying to save the seeds from is something that can grow in your area. Like if you find an orange and you don't live in Florida, I wouldn't advise you to save those. But if you find a tomato and you really like the taste of it, save the seeds and grow it yourself and see what happens. Um, if Yeah, as long as it's something that can grow in your area, I would say go for it. Um, and you're not really going to lose anything if it doesn't work out the way you want it to. But it's a great learning opportunity, and you might end up with something even better than what you started with. But you'll never know unless you try. And if you think about it, you were going to throw those seeds away anyway, so why not save them and try? Um, all right, the next slide. Oh, I just saw somebody say, "Are there GMO seeds?" There are, but they're for industrial agriculture, and you're probably not going to be able to purchase those on your own as a single person. So I wouldn't worry about them too much. Um, that's why you want to grow your own stuff. Um, all right. So here's another question that people often ask: when can I save the seeds? And the answer is, next slide. It depends on the plant. Um, some plants, you can save the seeds in almost immediately. Some, especially fruit bearing plants, we don't eat the mature fruit, we eat it immature. So, like cucumbers, you would have to leave those on the vine until they fully mature. And they fully mature, they're not very pretty, and they turn strange yellow green color, and they get pretty big. That's when you would save those. But for tomatoes, you can, I mean, as soon as it's ripe, you can save them. Beans or peas, you would let them dry first before you save those. Um, Another example, like collards or cabbage, when they send up their stalks and those get pollinated, the flowers get pollinated and they form the seed pods. You would let those dry, and once those are dry, your seeds are ready to store. And if you have questions, you can you can look it up. And if you're still confused, try your local cooperative extension agent. Their job is to know what plants grow well where you live. So go talk to them. And make sure you talk to the horticulture agent, um, and not the farm agent, because the farm agent would be talking about like field corn and wheat and stuff like that. All right, next slide. So there are two different categories of vegetable seeds. There are dry seeds and there are wet seeds. So wet seeds are seeds that usually are in pods, and you usually let them dry on the plant. Um, Depending on the weather, you might not be able to. So you let it dry as long as possible, and then if it gets too damp, or it's going to rain, or a hurricane is coming, or whatever, you would bring them inside to let them continue to dry. And if you can keep them attached to the plant, that's fine. That's actually even better. But so this is a picture of some dried beans. Other dry seeds, like I said before, collard seeds, cabbage seeds, most herb seeds are dry seeds. And when I say dry, I mean there's no kind of any wet surface on the seeds. And the other type of seeds, vegetable seeds that we can save are wet seeds. So next slide, please. So wet seeds. Wet seeds are the ones that are contained inside of a fleshy fruit. So cucumber seeds, squash seeds, pumpkin seeds, tomato seeds, um, watermelon. They don't all have to be saved the same way, but in general, with those seeds, you want to ferment them so that you can remove the little film that's on the outside of the seed, because that film is meant to keep those seeds from germinating. And if you ferment them, it breaks it down so that the seeds are exposed so that when you go to plant them, they'll germinate faster. And you don't have to wait for that outside layer to degrade. And also, you want to remove all of the wet material so that you can store your seeds, because you want to store your seeds dry. So in this picture is a picture of some tomato seeds that are being fermented. And Xavier is going to talk about saving tomato seeds later. And there are people who say you don't need to ferment them. I prefer to do it that way because, like I said, it removes that growth inhibition layer, but it also, you get rid of a lot of seeds that aren't viable, and you diminish the chance that that the seeds that you do save are going to have any kind of disease. Um, Wait, somebody asked a question. Can somebody read that question again about the herb seeds? It popped up, but it went away before I could read it.
Yes, I got it. It says, can you expound on saving herb seeds, sage, rosemary, chives, dill, and tarragon?
Um,
And what is the technique for fermenting wet seeds is another question that just came in.
okay, so the herb seeds, mostly, you just want to, honestly, if your plant goes to seed, most of the time, if it, uh, you know, you want to let it completely dry out, and then you would remove the seed heads and just shake them into a container or onto a plate, and then separate out the husk from the seed. Um, and that works for pretty much most of the herbs that you would typically have. Um, it it's really simple. You would just shake them out. And for fermenting, so you would take like for tomatoes in particular, um, and you can do this with squash seeds and cucumber seeds as well. Even though peppers are considered a wet seed, you don't have to do that. Peppers, because the inside is dry, you would just take them out and let them air dry and then store them away. But with the tomato, you'd cut it open, squeeze the inside into a jar, a glass jar, and just all the guts, everything, seeds, doesn't matter. Squeeze it out, and then cover it with water by like an inch or two. Um, and cover the jar with a paper towel or a piece of cloth and you put a rubber band around it so it doesn't fall off. One, because you don't want stuff getting into your jar, um, and you don't really want anything getting out of it. So you cover it, leave it out on the counter, and you let it go for at least 2 days. And you'll see that the seeds will start to separate within the water. and it'll start to get a mold on top. And you won't be confused about the mold. It'll be really obvious. Um, and it's like a whitish gray color. So once you see that whole top get uh, molded over, and you're going to check on it after like a couple days, and just keep, you look at it and see how molded it is, cover it back up. And after about 2 or 3 days, you're going to remove the cover and pour off only the stuff on the top. And you can pour it into your compost. You can pour it, in the toilet, throw it out, however you want to do it. But you only pour off the stuff on the top, and it'll come out pretty much all at once as a single layer. Um, and then everything in the bottom, those are the good seeds. Those are the viable seeds. Those are the ones that are going to give you tomatoes next season. So you're going to put the stuff in the bottom. You're going to rinse those off, preferably in a mesh strainer, so that it'll remove itself. And you just keep washing it until the seeds are completely clean. And then take those seeds, put them on either a paper towel or a paper plate, and let them dry, air dry. And they'll be dry it depends on how warm it is. And in the summertime, it might be done like overnight. And then when you're done, you know that they're dry when they separate themselves from the plate or from the paper towel. Some of them might stick, but for the most part, if you clean them well enough, when they're completely dry, they won't stick to the surface anymore. And then you just put them away in an airtight container and save them till next season. Does anybody have any more questions about fermenting seeds? And that process works for all wet seeds. And there was another question about herbs, but I missed that one. So next slide, please. And so once you've got your seeds, you need to store them. You need to store them in a cool, dark, dry place. You don't want them to be warm, because warmth germinates seeds. You don't want to be bright, because the bright light could germinate your seeds, or it could create the warmth that will germinate your seeds. And you want it to be dry, because seeds need moisture to germinate. If you can keep your container airtight, and you can use those little silica packs. I've also heard that you can use rice to keep it dry. You can store your seeds in the refrigerator, but the freezer is better if you can keep it airtight. And the seeds will be viable for a little bit longer. But honestly, you just grow your seeds. Like once you've saved them, grow them. You can save them from year to year, and it depends on the seed. It depends on how well you've kept them. But the best thing you can do is grow them next year. Grow them as soon as it's possible to grow them, so that you can get more seed. But they're seeds that have been grown, that scientists have found, that were thousands of years old. But I mean, we're not going to try to do that. But some seeds can last, up to 10 years. Some last from one season to the next. And if you want to see if your seeds are any good, you can do a germination test, count out 10 seeds, sprout them, count how many actually come up and grow. And then that's your percentage of germination. And if you would also like to, for your seeds to live on, share them with other people. Because if people share their seeds, you increase the genetic diversity, because what because the genes that are working at your house are not necessarily the ones that I have working at my house, and something from your population might be beneficial to me, and vice versa. And also, it keeps your community going because food food is one of the things that hold the community together. And if everybody is growing it, the genetic diversity is even more expanded, and it keeps the varieties alive. All right, next slide. So when you're sharing from person to person, make your own seed envelopes. Um, of course, you can use envelopes that you already have, or reuse envelopes that reuse seed envelopes from the past. But making your own, it's easy. Here's a This is the seed envelopes that I prefer to use. And you can just use scrap paper, especially if you visit somebody and like, oh, I've got some tomato seeds. Tomato season's coming up. Here, I really like this. You might like it too. You share your seeds in a homemade seed envelope. And you write on there what kind of seeds they are, who gave them to you, when they gave them to you, where they came from, all whatever information you feel like you need. But and you stick it in your pocket and go home instead of trying to figure out, like, how am I going to get these back to my house. And if you can, stay away from saving your seeds in or sharing your seeds in plastic. So no Ziploc bags or anything like that, because seeds are living beings. They're dormant, but they're alive, and they need to breathe the same as you do. And next slide. So community projects, something that you can do in your community. So you start a seed sharing circle. So you save with your friends. They save seeds, you save seeds, and then y'all share amongst yourselves. And then the community starts a seed bank so that everybody has access to seeds that are important to the community. And if you have a seed bank full of seeds that are known to feed the community, then you're on your way to food sovereignty, because those seeds are going to stay with you in your community, because you are the stewards of those seeds. And if you have control over what you grow, then you have control over what you eat.